Now to a highly unusual move in the Breonna Taylor case. Today, the Kentucky Attorney General released 15 hours of audio tape from the 2.5-day grand jury investigation into Taylor's death after a judge ordered it. That grand jury did not charge any officers with Taylor's death and just one former officer with endangering Taylor's neighbors. The prosecutor said this at the time.
According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death.
That, of course, sparked outrage and protests. The tapes released today come after an anonymous member of the grand jury filed a lawsuit accusing the prosecutor of trying to deflect responsibility for the charging decision. ABC's Alex Perez has been poring over these newly released tapes and joins us now. Thanks so much, Alex. So let's start off with what we learned today about the case, especially about the question of whether those three officers announced themselves before barging into Breonna Taylor's home in the middle of the night.
Well, Lindsay, first of all, we can't punctuate enough just how rare it is to have a look at the grand jury proceedings at this point in the criminal case. Now, in terms of what we learned from these tapes when it comes to police barging in, we knew from before that officers were serving a no-knock search warrant, but we've learned through testimony that they say once they arrived there, they discussed the fact that Jamarcus Glover, that's Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend and sort of the center of the warrant, had been taken into custody earlier that evening. So they say because of that, they turned this into a knock and announce warrant. And so several officers testified that they actually knocked and identified themselves before barging in. Now, we know that Breonna's boyfriend, who was Kenneth Walker, who was inside the home with her at the time, the apartment, he says police did not identify themselves. But several officers in testimony contradicting what Kenneth Walker said. One officer saying they knocked on the door for at least 2 minutes, identifying themselves and then knocking, identifying themselves again, and then knocking. In testimony, one of the officers described those few chaotic seconds when they barged through that door and the gunfire began. Let's take a quick listen to some of that testimony describing the chaos.
I'm at the threshold of the door. I am immediately overwhelmed with bright flashes and darkness and what I describe as a movie reel that's doing that ticking where you see white and black and white and black. I know John is now not where he's supposed to be. There's nobody in front of me. John is now on the ground, or John is below me. And there's still these flashes happening, these vivid white and black flashes. So there are these vivid white lights followed by this darkness. And the room, and I don't see a room, I just see this hall. You know, it's like a surreal thing. Like, if you told me I didn't do something at that time, I believe you. If you told me I did do something, I probably believe you too. I think it's important for me to tell you what that. So during this flashing light, I am seeing this human shadow figure. I don't think I said that, so I just want to say that. So, larger than normal human shadow figure.
And so there in that audio recording, we hear one of the officers in testimony describing those few seconds, calling it chaotic, saying he saw a lot of flashing lights and then suddenly everything went dark. Also saying that it happened very, very quickly. And Lindsay, we know it was in those seconds that Breonna Taylor was shot and died almost instantly there on the scene. Lindsay.
And as we heard earlier, the Kentucky Attorney General said publicly that two of the officers were, quote, justified in firing into Taylor's home because her boyfriend fired first. Do we know if the Attorney General said that to the grand jury, and was that the grand jury's conclusion as well?
Well, Lindsay, from listening to what the Attorney General has said publicly and hearing all of the information on these tapes, we know that the Attorney General never presented a case on those other two officers to the grand jury. So they did not reach any conclusion when it comes to those two other officers because the Attorney General said from the beginning, because Kenneth Walker fired at them, they were justified in using their weapons, and so there was no case to move forward with the grand jury. They never heard anything on those other two officers, Lindsay.
And we also know that some of the grand jury proceedings were not recorded and made public. Why was why was that the case, and what was left off?
Well, Lindsay, the Attorney General says this is customary. The prosecutor's statements, their recommendation to the jurors, and the jury deliberations themselves, those things were not recorded, and because of that, were not part of this release that was made to the public today. The Attorney General says they just don't record those portions of it because that's not considered evidence. Only the evidence is recorded. So those moments, those things, we won't actually ever know, Lindsay.
Alex Perez, thanks so much for your reporting.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.